The Zephyrian delegation circled Marcus Chen's modest farmstead, with barely concealed disdain, their crystalline exoskeletons clicking against the metal walkways of New Terra Station. Ambassador Vex High's compound eyes swept over the dirt-filled containers and primitive irrigation systems, with what could only be described as disgust. "This is your contribution to our colony's sustainability?" Vex High's voice resonated through his translation device, each word dripping with condescension. "Dirt, water? These plants?" Marcus wiped his calloused hands on his work pants, unfazed by the alien's tone. At 62, he'd faced worse critics than pompous extraterrestrials. "Yes, sir. Good old-fashioned agriculture." The other Zephyrians chittered among themselves, their language sounding like wind chimes in a hurricane. Dr. Kelina, the colony's chief nutritionist, stepped forward, her sleek form towering over the human farmer. "Human Chen, we appreciate Earth's quaint traditions, but we've evolved beyond such primitive methods. Our biosynthesizers can produce any required nutrients with perfect efficiency. No soil contamination, no weather dependency, no pest management issues." Marcus nodded politely. "That's mighty impressive, Doc. But what happens when those machines break down?" "They don't," Vex High interjected sharply. "Zephyrian technology is flawless. We've sustained 17 colonies across 4 star systems without a single significant failure." "Well," Marcus said, bending down to check the moisture level in his tomato bed, "there's always a first time." The delegation exchanged glances that needed no translation. Here was this primitive human, clinging to outdated methods while surrounded by beings who had mastered the very fabric of biological creation. It was almost pitiable. Over the following weeks, the Zephyrians made no effort to hide their amusement at Marcus's daily routines. They watched him water his plants by hand, tend to his soil with crude tools, and carefully monitor temperature and humidity with analog instruments. Their biosynthesizers hummed efficiently in their sterile facility, producing perfect nutritional cubes that sustained the colony's population of 3,000. "Look at him," Vex High would comment to his subordinates as they passed the agricultural section. "Still playing in dirt like a larvae." Marcus heard the comments but continued his work. His vegetables grew slowly but steadily. Tomatoes, carrots, potatoes, beans, lettuce, and dozens of other earth crops he'd carefully adapted to the station's artificial environment. Each day he harvested small amounts, barely enough to feed himself and the handful of humans who appreciated fresh produce. The crisis came without warning. A massive solar storm, unprecedented in the system's recorded history, sent electromagnetic pulses cascading through New Terra Station. The first wave knocked out secondary systems. The second destroyed the primary power grid. The third, the most devastating, fried every piece of sophisticated electronics on the station, including the biosynthesizers. In the emergency meeting that followed, panic crackled through the assembled Zephyrian leadership like electricity. Their perfect machines were dead, reduced to expensive sculptures. The backup synthesizers were equally useless. Food reserves would last perhaps 10 days. "We need to contact the homeworld immediately," Dr. Kelina insisted, her usual composure cracking. "Emergency supply ship." "The communication array is down," Commander Thessal reported grimly. "Everything electronic was destroyed. It will take months to rebuild, assuming we can even acquire the components." "Months?" Vex High's voice rose to a shriek. "We don't have months. We have days." In the chaos of emergency planning and desperate calculations, someone mentioned the human farmer. There was a moment of silence before bitter laughter filled the room. "The dirt player?" Dr. Kelina scoffed. His tiny garden couldn't feed 50 individuals, let alone 3,000. But as the days passed and the food synthesizers remained silent, desperation began to override pride. On the 5th day after the storm, Vex High found himself standing outside Marcus's agricultural bay, his dignity warring with his empty stomach. Marcus looked up from where he was harvesting potatoes, unsurprised to see the ambassador. "I suppose you've come about the food situation," Marcus said quietly. Vex High's exoskeleton seemed to dim. "Human Chen, we require assistance. Our population faces starvation. If you have any surplus—" "I've been expecting this," Marcus interrupted gently. "Been working around the clock since the storm hit." He led the bewildered ambassador deeper into the agricultural section, past the small plots Vex High remembered mocking. But these areas had transformed. Where once there had been modest containers, now sprawling hydroponic systems stretched as far as the eye could see. Automated but mechanical, not electronic. Irrigation systems fed thousands of plants. Grow lights powered by hand-cranked generators illuminated endless rows of vegetables. "How is this possible?" Vexhai whispered. "This is 10 times larger than before." Marcus smiled, the expression carving deep lines around his weathered eyes. "Been planning for this possibility since day one. You folks were so focused on your fancy machines you never noticed I was expanding into the unused sections." Old Earth sang, "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst." But the scale, how could you maintain all this alone? Who said I was alone? Marcus gestured to the far end of the bay, where dozens of humans worked among the plants. Every person has to eat. Some of us just remembered how to make that happen without depending on computers. The next months transformed New Terra Station. Under Marcus's patient guidance, Cypherians learned to work soil with their own hands, to recognize the subtle signs of plant health, to understand the ancient rhythms of growth and harvest. Their sophisticated minds, once focused on quantum equations and stellar cartography, turned to simpler but no less complex mysteries of agriculture. Dr. Kalina discovered that her scientific background translated surprisingly well to botany. Commander Thessal found unexpected satisfaction in the methodical work of tending crops. Even Ambassador Vexhai, swallowing his considerable pride, learned to distinguish between healthy and diseased plants. When the communication systems were finally restored and supply ships arrived from the homeworld, they found New Terra Station not just surviving, but thriving. The colony had become entirely self-sufficient, producing more food than it consumed. "I owe you an apology," Vexhai told Marcus as they watched the sunset through the station's observation deck, their hands still dirty from the day's harvest. "We dismissed your methods as primitive, but we were the ones who were backward." Marcus shook his head. "Not backward, just specialized. You built amazing machines. But machines break. Soil endures. And humans." The old farmer smiled, looking out at the stars where 17 other Zephyrian colonies were already requesting agricultural consultants. "Humans endure too, and we remember things, old things, important things." In the months that followed, Marcus Chen became the most requested human in the galaxy, traveling from colony to colony, teaching the ancient art of making things grow. The Zephyrians learned that true technology wasn't about eliminating the fundamental processes of life. It was about understanding them so deeply that no storm, no matter how fierce, could wash them away. And in the end, they discovered that the most sophisticated system of all was the one that had sustained Earth for millennia. Dirt, water, seeds, and the patient wisdom of those who understood that some things never go out of style.